And so, with Criswell's haunting lines, "God help us in the future," Plan 9 soars to its immortal conclusion. You will also note the extremely artistic touch with which the director, Mr. Edward Wood, ends his film. We see right on the screen, "Made in Hollywood, USA," to make it very clear to us that this film was not made in Hollywood, Czechoslovakia, or any other foreign locale. But there is one item that bears very, very close scrutiny here. Mr. Criswell was a television psychic. He wrote his own lines, and one of the minor miracles about this film is that his prose style blended so perfectly with that of Mr. Edward D. Wood, similar in aptitude, pretension, fatuity. Now, one of the points that has been debated frequently over the years by cinema historians and world experts on unidentified flying hubcaps has been whether Criswell, this television psychic who provides the narration in the film, was telling the truth when he tells us that this episode is based on sworn testimony. Did it really happen, as Mr. Wood portrayed it on screen? Was this a genuine episode in the history of intergalactic contact? Now, the best way to evaluate that, I think, is to look at Mr. Criswell's track record as a television psychic. And when he had his own TV show, Criswell Predicts, he made a number of searing and startling predictions about what we should expect in the future. For instance, he predicted that Richard Nixon would be elected to a third term as president in 1976. He also predicted, on a more cheerful note, that Fidel Castro would be assassinated in 1970. He also predicted that the first astronauts to land on the moon would be pregnant women. Also, that the United States would start World War III in 1975. And finally, that in March 1976, presumably after the beginning of World War III, the United States government would return the state of New Mexico to the Indians. Now, it's true that with some of these predictions, Mr. Criswell's record of accuracy was not outstanding. However, I think it's important that we still look very carefully at some predictions which he put on record about future events that we haven't approached yet. For instance, he indicated that in the year 1984, there would be a sudden and inexplicable plague of baldness among women in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, I would only indicate to you that unless you fancy bald women, don't move to St. Louis at this time. He also predicted that we would have intergalactic visitors by the end of the 1980s. They would not necessarily be named Eros and Tana and would not necessarily be played by Dudley Manlove, but they would come down and they would hold the world's first intergalactic convention. Where else? On the Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we do have that to look forward to. All that I can say is that based upon Mr. Criswell's track record, he should be taken very, very seriously, watched very closely indeed. God help us in the future, and remember, the worst is yet to come.